morning. I want to extend a welcome to everybody in the room. This is an amazing group together, and the topic of our roundtable conversation today is whole health, a community response to COVID, which is absolutely been front and center for all of us over the last couple of years. But this event is not only an opportunity to think about what we've learned about public health and about community support over the last few years, but it's also a way for us to focus on how we take the lessons that we have all learned and move forward as a society. I wanted, first of all, to say thank you to our partners in managing through COVID, which include federal, state, and city level. And I want to recognize who we have in the room today, at least some of the folks that we have in the room. Secretary for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Xavier Becerra. We're delighted to have you with us today. Representatives from our congressional delegation, including Senators Michael Bennet and John Hickenlooper, and Congresswoman Deanna DeGette, and also, of course, Governor and our Lieutenant Governor as well, and Denver's leader. We have we have 3 regents around the room. University of Colorado regents, Norbert Chavez, Callie Renison, and Alana Spiegel, who are here, and thank you so much for being with us. And we have, and I believe we also have Councilwoman Amanda Sandoval and Jamie Torres with us today.
Wonderful.
And nice to meet you for the first time, I think, in person. One of them, welcome. I think I want to start out by introducing our amazing governor, 43rd governor of the state of Colorado. He's been not only an incredible leader for our state, but on the national stage, a leader through the pandemic. Governor Polis.
Well, thank you, Chancellor. It is really exciting to welcome my friend Xavier Becerra to Colorado. And I point out he's been here before as well, and we're just excited to welcome him back. He helped a lot with doing work around vaccine equity, and we did a lot of Spanish interviews together the last time he was here. You know, he and I were colleagues in Congress for a number of years, and he is really doing a great job for President Biden as Secretary of Health and Human Services, especially working closely with Colorado on our Saving People Money on Healthcare agenda. Our Lieutenant Governor's ahead of our Saving People Money on Healthcare office. But really dwarfing all health issues this last 2 years has been COVID. And so one of the things that we've really done here in Colorado is fought to make sure that we minimize interruptions to kids' education. And that's both in our K-12 school side, and of course higher ed. And so it came from a thoughtful, deliberate approach from the CU system, who's here, and they have 3 campuses in Colorado, Boulder, Denver, and Colorado Springs, but also our other systems across the state all really rose to the occasion. And frankly, a lot of that was support from the federal government, from the Department, some from the FEMA reimbursements that were allowed, a number of different areas that kind of all came together. And as a result, frankly, through much of last year, colleges were among the safest places to be in our state. And that was largely due to the high vaccination rate that they had. I think the chancellor told me that staff here was at about a 98% vaccination rate, and students at about a 92% vaccination rate. So really made an enormous difference from the early days, and we're proud that while, of course, like everybody across the whole country and world, there were inconveniences along the way, interruptions to in-person education were minimized in the CU system because of the strong practices that they adapted, because of the partnership with the state, with the federal government. And we have a lot of folks here to share observations on that process today, and I'm excited to welcome you to Colorado.
And I also want to have the privilege and pleasure of introducing Secretary Becerra. Do you want to make a few remarks? You are the former Attorney General, State of California, first Latino to be the Secretary of HHS. So thrilled to have you on campus.
First, Chancellor, thank you very much for letting us be here on the campus, especially when you've got really good numbers to boast about. That's probably the most important thing. You're doing the right thing by your staff, but also by the students that are here. So I suspect Coloradans are very proud of where you've taken this campus and the university writ large, and so thank you for that. And we thank you as well, because we see where places are doing well, we see where places aren't doing so well. Governor, always good to see you. Thank you for always inviting Thank you for always making me go home with more work. But that's the way Jared Polis is. Whether it's Jared Polis congressman or Jared Polis governor, he never runs out of ideas, and I think that's why Colorado's in a pretty good place. By the way, congratulations. My understanding is you all are at the top of the list when it comes to vaccinating folks 65 and old. And from what I'm hearing about the campus, you're doing really, really well with students overall as well. And so kudos to you. And if Omicron didn't hit you so hard, it's probably because you all were prepared. And that's what it's all about, right? And so to you, to Lieutenant Governor, to council people who are here, to all of you who have been part of this effort, just we want to give you a shout out because we're not done. As much as it feels like we're ending, we're not. And the president said it very well in the State of the Union address. There isn't a life in America that hasn't been touched by COVID. But at the same time, he said, there is no reason why COVID should control our life. And so we're at that second part. We're trying to now get to that next level. And we want to continue to partner with you. We want to find out what you think works. We want to continue to do those things that do. And we want to know what's next. And for us, what's next is to continue to get people to get vaccinated so we can fight off not just COVID, not just Omicron, but whatever might come at us, but also be ready for what might come after that. And I think everyone knows there's something coming after that. Just how prepared will we be? So very interested in hearing your thoughts on that. Love to know what you're doing to be ready. And we want to know what you want us to do to partner with you so you all can lead the pack in so many ways. So thanks for letting me come. Look forward to listening.
Thank you so much. I want to go around the table and do brief introductions so that everybody has a chance to do a brief introduction. I also want to mention that CU Denver did extraordinarily well. It's partly because we have two other institutions here on campus with us on the Auraria campus, and I want to introduce one of the Metropolitan State University's board members, Marissa Molina, who's with us today. And also we have the chancellor of the entire community college system in the state of Colorado, Joe Garcia, and the Community College of Denver is one of the other institutions on this campus, so welcome. Could we go quickly around the room with introduction, just your name and your
Proud CU Denver alumna,
Double
Lily
alum.
Griego. Yes, double alum,
Double alum.
and proudly working for Secretary Xavier Becerra.
Good morning, Karen McNeil-Miller, CEO of the Colorado Health Foundation.
Good morning, Mike Cortez, Colorado Latino Leadership Advocacy Research Organization. Been around since 1964, and glad to be here.
Noel Chavez, I'm the Chief of External Initiatives and HHS Engagement, and I also serve on the board.
Jamie Torres, I am proudly representing West Denver District 3, predominantly Latino district in Denver. And where I was born and raised, I'm also a CU Denver alum, medical anthropology. And I was one of 5 Latina electeds who held community equity clinics in West and Northwest Denver.
Joe Garcia, Chancellor of the 13 community college system. We educate about 130,000 students every year. Former Lieutenant Governor, I had the opportunity to work with this administration and just really excited about the focus they are bringing to higher education in Colorado.
Callie Renison, I'm a CU Board of Regents member, and I'm also a faculty member here at the School of Public Affairs on the CU Denver campus. Welcome.
Marissa Molina, I'm a trustee with Metropolitan State University of Denver, but also an immigration advocate, and so have had the opportunity to work with Governor Polis's staff on many different initiatives related to COVID through the Office of New Americans.
Hi, good morning. Alana Spiegel. I'm a regent, represent the 6th Congressional District, which includes the Anschutz Medical Campus, which is another one of the campuses in our system. Also a proud parent of 4 kids, some still in K-12, some within the CU system, and others who have graduated onto other places, and thank you so much for being here.
I'm Chris Hilton. I'm a public health student here at CU Denver and student body president.
Mr. President.
Carmen Ramirez, I work for the City of Longmont and manage community and neighborhood resources, and also served on the vaccine equity. I was co-chair for Boulder County.
Harry Budisiddhartha, I'm the Executive Director of Asian Pacific Development Center. We serve immigrants and refugees from over 30 different countries.
Hi, good afternoon. Patrice Hawkins, Deputy Executive Director at Denver Human Services and also a proud social worker.
I'm Diane Primavera, Lieutenant Governor. I have the honor of serving with the best governor in the nation, of course. And then I also head up the Office of Saving People Money on Healthcare.
Fantastic. Well, I have a few opening remarks, and I think the idea then is just to have an informal conversation around these topics. I started as chancellor here at CU Denver in July of 2020, at the front end of, bless you, of the pandemic. It was running an institution of higher education is challenging enough, but then bring in a pandemic. And I think many of us can relate to this idea that we were leading organizations, but not thinking about our jobs as leading some life and death issues. And all of a sudden, we're all thrust into leading through a public health crisis. What I have learned, and I think my team, many of my team are here in the room as we lead together, is that the importance of succeeding is based in collaboration and is based in community engagement. And when it comes to public health, both collaboration at the institutional level, working with our students, thank you, Chris, and our faculty and our staff, and in the case of our campus, our sister institutions, but also at the local, the state, and the federal level. We have all lived through the challenges of the last 2 years, but we have not all experienced the pandemic in the same way, and frankly, it's been harder on our communities of color. They have had higher mortality rates, they have had less access to testing and to quality health care, and it's more difficulty with vaccine rollouts. And this fact goes really straight to our heart here at CU Denver and also our sister institutions on the Elyria campus. We are the only urban public research institution in the state of Colorado. Let me tell you about our student body. Half of our students are first generation in the family to go to college. Half of our undergraduate students are students of color. We have 70% of our students who are working and learning. And we have a lot of students who are parent students, and we have a lot of students who are caretakers. And so all of this emerged as we lead through the pandemic in very challenging and difficult ways. And I know that MSU and CCD have similar populations. I think the challenges were heightened by the fact that we're an urban campus in an urban location. So as I watched how my peers led universities around the country, some of them in different areas could kind of separate out and become and take a bubble approach. We can't do that because so many of our students are commuting in and out, and our students represent the community here in Denver and in other parts of Colorado. So these are big challenges, but I have to say the pride of how we managed through it, and it's going to lead to a big thank you to you, to the state, and to you at HHS and to the feds, is that we were less focused on our challenges and more focused on how to keep the mission of education going while keeping our campus and keeping our students safe, and that was always front and center to us. We had incredibly strong support from our city, from our state, led by Governor Polis, and from the federal government. And without the funding, and here are just some examples of the federal funding, and much of which went through the state. This is some real concrete examples of how it helped us. One, it made food available on our campus, extra food. Two, more additional and access to mental health services, which are absolutely critical. Financial aid to help keep our students in school. Access to technology like laptops to enable our students who all of a sudden had to pivot virtually to stay in school. To allow us to keep our campus housing open. It allowed us with our deep partnerships with our MSU and CCD and AHAC, our Rarian colleagues, to literally take a parking garage on campus, Ms. Puckett, thank you very much, and convert it into first a vaccination center. We're at the height of our, first a testing center, and then ultimately a vaccination center that served not only our large campus environments, but the entire community. And one other thing is that in addition to battling COVID and keeping our community safe, as a higher education institution, we saw our role as educators of the community, and we brought our faculty expertise together to help educate our broad communities about what was going on in the public health response. So we're so grateful for the state support that we received, for the local report, and for the federal support. Thank you so much. It's incredibly important. So what have we learned? The conversation that will come now. We built a lot of muscles around how to manage through this crisis. And I think the important thing, and we think about this as institutions of higher education, is it's not enough to build the muscles about how to handle something, but now we have to take what are the lessons learned that we take into the future to continue to do better and serve our citizens and serve our community. So let me kick off the conversation, and it's such a wonderful conversation to have, with the question of what have we learned through this crisis that we need to take forward into the future?
Can I add one thing about, and build on what you said, Chancellor? Because the piece about us switching from a testing site to a vaccination site, we were really taking the lead from our local wonderfully elected officials who stepped up. Councilwoman Torres, Councilwoman Amanda Sandoval, Debbie Ortega, Julie Gonzalez in the Senate, and many others. They went above and beyond their roles to organize our community, and we were lucky enough to partner with them. And Servicios de la Raza and Nita Gonzalez, who was working for you, Governor. I mean, we all came together in that way, but it was they really deserve a lot of credit for leading through that. And I was at some of those sites, and they were all there passing out, cards and I mean, hands on. And so it was wonderful to see, looking back now that, that we're past that chapter, looking back at how wonderful they were. And Councilwoman, I mean, you deserve so much credit for bringing us together. Chris from our shop helped with that, and it was a wonderful event. We vaccinated 1,400 folks, but they did many more than that. They did about 5 locations, so it was a great collaboration. So I just wanted to build on what you were saying.
You asked what we learned, and I think one of the things that drew into sharp focus is that disparities almost define our economy, our educational system, and certainly our healthcare system. And it's not just disparities between Black, brown, and white communities, but frankly what we've seen here in college between our urban and rural communities. Our students and faculty and communities in our small rural communities did not test, did not get vaccinated at the same rate, didn't have access when we had to go online to broadband, so it was hard for them to continue their education. So I think we need to recognize those disparities. And I think what the governor did over the last couple of years is really try to focus on closing those equity gaps, but there's just still so much more to do.
I think that's really important. That we look at communities in the metro area, you have a lot of collaborations, but in Longmont, where we have less of those resources, less of those connections, it's really important to recognize that difference, and then also to see how we can connect. We connected with Servicios de la Raza and Front Range Community College to bring out a vaccine equity, but one that was culturally relevant. And I think that's so important. Our cultural brokers, our community connectors, those are so important, but that muscle that you talked about, we are great at jumping in and responding to crisis because it's our gente, it's our community, but then how are you going to sustain us so we keep exercising that muscle and we are part of systems? I've been through a flood, I've been through some gang issues, and systemically, where is that? Because el día de mañana, when I'm gone, how are we going to make sure that that system continues that collaboration, exercising muscles and resources? And I have to point out one thing. Lily was awesome because we were also doing this other thing called the Census. Right? In the middle of all this, we were doing the Census. We now know that the Census is going to impact communities of color because there was an undercount, right? Our folks they went through, did a car parade through mobile home parks with graduations. They jumped quickly, and I think what is missing is, okay, if you were able to jump, what do I need to support you so that you can continue? So the digital divide. We had kids that were in the park trying to access internet, right? We've now tiered our rates for the internet because the city of Longmont owns the internet. So I think identifying those successes, but then those collaborations and how do we become stronger, because I need people from Denver as well as you all need people from Longmont, right? And so how do we extend those collaborations and strengthen that system? And so we did the census and we did testing and we did vaccine outreach, and one of the things that we did is we worked with not only the Latino community but the GLBTQ community to make our vaccine clinics culturally welcoming, right? and that we were in the community. So we were in our low-income communities, and we were making it welcoming to all. And we were using those culture workers to get the word out, right? Vengan a vacunarse. You know, bring your grandmother, bring your, right? And so those things are things that, how do we train our systems to automatically do that? Automatically think in 2 languages, 3 languages, 4 languages. So,
Adding on to Carmen's comment, I think one thing we can't go back on is building trust. To do all of those things, to get into community, you have to have trust built. When we're asking people to get that vaccination, I need trust for people to be able to feel comfortable, to feel safe, to feel like they're respected culturally, the differences that all of our communities have. And I don't think we can go back where government is separate from community. Government has to be a part of community. Community has to be a part of government, a seat at the table, and coming up with these solutions. And so, you know, here in Denver, even partnering with a lot of the schools on this campus to expand food access. Well, the students have trust with their counselors here, with the people running the food pantries on the campus, not always with a government institution. So how do we collaborate and partner? We don't always have to be the face of it. Let those folks who've been out front with building trust and creating that space lead the way, and we're always here to back you up and bolster the services that you have to offer.
I think one thing we've learned at the Auraria campus, and really grateful Chancellor Marks and Chancellor Garcia to be here with you all, is what an incredible resource and what an incredible set of talent our students have. You know, you heard Chancellor Marks talk about the diversity in this campus. And I had this enormous privilege to work with a couple of our students who were working and interning at clinics across this, the city and county of Denver. And they would say, hey, I have 10 appointments for COVID vaccines available. How can I get 10 Latino elders a spot in those vaccine clinics, right? They were thinking about their communities. How do we serve them? And to Patrice and Carmen's point, you know, we need more cultural competency in public health. And what a better way to be able to create that than to create and resource institutions like the ones you have in your area campus, who already have such an incredible group and talented of young people and who want to join public health, who have those cultural competencies that we frankly saw missing in so many parts of the system throughout the pandemic. And I think too, thinking through just how important it is to have the trust of the community and to resource those community groups, because you know we put a lot of emphasis in being able to move vaccines and testing to hospital systems sometimes that frankly didn't know how to serve some of the communities of color really well. And so, and I saw Councilwoman Torres and Senator Julie Gonzalez, when they didn't just set up a clinic, they were actually calling people. They were in the line helping people get vaccinated. And so I think for other people like me, other Latinas like me, to have that, see that example of if something isn't working, we all have a role to play. And I stepped up to meet that role to play, and I think we really saw that with our council members and our elected leaders in Denver. So it's a great lesson.
If I could build on the 2 last comments around taking government to the community. And I know we have a lot of big vaccination clinics or testing clinics that were at the Coliseum or that were at Bronco Stadium. Those benefit those who have a car and who have time. And so we didn't see a lot of people of color at those events, but you take that same event, a smaller scale, and put it in the parking lot of the taqueria, where everybody stops in the morning to get something and grabs lunch, and you get a free order of churros. You know, people, it was on their way, so there wasn't a destination. So the more we can continue to take our services and our government into community, the better.
Our vehicle was trust. It really was. Marissa's comment about us making phone calls, we got lists of residents in what we were seeing in our news outlets and reports of where is hospitalization hitting communities hardest, where is death hitting communities hardest. and we focused on those areas. Senator Julian Gonzalez had just come off the heels of a 3-person funeral in her family in January of last year. And we connected with Nita, who was working with the governor's office, and we said, we can't wait. We can't keep waiting for it to come to our neighborhoods. We need to find a parking lot, and we need to find cones, and Google is our friend, Google Sheets, Google Voice, and then we called folks. And to be able to have those one-on-one conversations with people puts you in a position to dispel whatever mythologies are running through their mind, whatever fears are running through their mind. We walked through the process with a woman who worked at Regis, because we held them at Servicios de la Raza in their parking lot, and a small parking lot, and we got 500 through that day. And then we were at St. Cajetan's, and we got thousands through that one. And then we were at Regis University. So we were able to, we could have done more, just the way that we were able to line folks up, get them through, bring in volunteers. And the conversations, I'll give you a perfect example. One of the workers at Regis, a Spanish speaker, was like, okay, I'll think about it, maybe at the end of the shift. And I just kept talking to her and asking her about other things. And then she asked me, so I hear this makes women sterile. And that was real for her. Like, she's no way she was placating me. And maybe I'll get it at the end of the day. She was not going near that vaccine. And so we walked through, and I talked to her, Julie talked to her in a language that she appreciated and that meant something to her. And she came back with her mom, and they both got vaccinated at Regis. And it was small things like that that happened every time. We had a car full of 4 generations of women from West Denver who pulled up to get their vaccines at St. Cajetan's. And it was those, I think, trust building things that reinforced for me, as I'm a public servant my entire career in Denver, that we had relationships with people that other institutions weren't able to capitalize on. And that, for me, on what lessons learned are, we need to improve that space. It took us weeks to get our public health order translated into Spanish. It took us months to get information out about washing your hands and hand sanitizer in multiple languages. So picking up on kind of what needs to be different next time, it's language access. And it's people in that space that can, in a really comfortable way, connect with those folks at the end of the line.
We knew the state was not the trusted messenger in communities across the state, and that's in many rural communities, in urban communities, undocumented community. So a few folks have mentioned folks like Nita, Elbra. We brought them over and said, you partner with the community. So I mean, it's city council people, it's churches, it's community organizations, and so there were over 2,100 equity clinics across the state in really all areas of the state. We just wanted to empower people who were trusted, because it wasn't the time to try to have that argument to win over why you should trust the state or the federal government. That's not that's not going to win over that lady having the federal government or the state saying it won't make you sterile. But having somebody who's trusted, communicate in a way that is authentic and has conveys that trust, that's the way we do it one at a time.
Trust is key, and institutions don't always appreciate that there are already pre-existing networks built on trust out there, informal networks. One of the most important lessons we learned, thanks to Lily and others who worked with us on the census, was that just like shrink wrapping buses with messages isn't going to get Latinos to turn up with the census, right? It's who you know and who you trust that can help get that word. And that was a huge help to us at Claro when we were doing outreach work on vaccination and testing. But this is, speaking of muscles, this is still a weak muscle in our system. The vaccine uptake rate for Latinos in Colorado is still nowhere close to where it should be. We were pleased to be able to work with the CDC through Unidos US in Washington, D.C., with whom we're affiliated, to try and learn about what works and think about strategies that are likely to work in the communities that we're not reaching. We ended up focusing on, for some of our population, social media among people that you know, and the rest of it, word of mouth among people in organizations the governor's just mentioned, where you can build on trust that already exists. We've also learned that reasons for slow uptake among Latinos are shifting as time passes. So there's the initial skepticism, there's the later proliferation of misinformation, and then there's an economic calculus also. People will have heard correctly. I hear that sometimes there are side effects of the vaccine. If I'm one of the unlucky ones and I end up missing time for work because of the side effects, we can't afford it. So it's rational for me to gamble on doing it without the vaccine so we know the income stream for the household is less likely to be disrupted. And that's out there. And we learned from the census, and we're learning from the pandemic experience that it's just terribly important to take advantage of the networks that already exist, get institutions, government, whatever, public health authorities and so forth, to work cooperatively with folks who already have the networks. Rudy's organization is just a terrific example. And there's other Latino organizations around the state that are also potential resources for that kind of strategy as well. I just wish we were institutionally better connected when it comes to vaccine outreach.
I have a specific ask for both the governor and the lieutenant governor in that as we all go around and talk about the importance of trust and clinics like Servicios or APDC, because we have that reach, we are excited about the new Behavioral Health Administration bill that's supported by the ARPA funding, but we are concerned that that bill does not recognize specialty provider. We're concerned that that bill, then we might get swept up under the other larger healthcare institution. So then we might lose, and then we are replaced by the bigger hospitals, those without the connection to our community. So we ask that, we are excited about the bill, we are excited about the transformation, but we do want to work with your administration and legislators to make sure that clinics like Servicios and APDC continue to serve the community.
We have about 10 minutes left. I want to ask about the opportunities that we see. We have an unusual group of people around the table, the federal, state, local, institutional level. Where are our opportunities as we look forward?
I think
Yeah.
there's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to think that there's opportunity in research, especially related to health disparities. You know, not only are we're focused on the vaccination rate at this point, but the infection rate and the hospitalization rate for Latinos was twice that all the way through. So it affected us more, and we're the least vaccinated. So I think there are opportunities for research. You know, we have the Latino Policy and Research Center that focuses on health disparities along with the Anschutz campus in particular. But there are certainly things that we can and should be doing in preparation for whatever comes next. Because assuming that it does, it's going to affect us in the same way. And to the extent that we invest in that, we'll be better prepared.
And I think, you know, we as you can hear from these stories and so much of the field work, the urgency with which the community sought to address the health disparities in the vaccination side, we need that same urgency in other areas of health, where there are disparities that are just as deadly, that they might not be as front page and glamorous as what was happening, but this kind of urgency, somehow we need to find a way to harbor that and use that around a broader set of public health disparities. It's not just about the vaccination, but how do we do that around a whole set of public health work?
Enforcement and English proficiency planning when it comes to anytime federal government gives money to municipalities and states. I think that as a municipal worker, that was overlooked a lot when we would apply for federal grants. Some pretty perfunctory information would be provided. Nobody would ever check up on it. And what we don't need are investments in communities that aren't prioritizing language access.
And I would say making our systems more holistic. Someone comes in for food, they also need information and assistance for rent. We now have several families that were impacted, we all probably personally too. How will they recover in a holistic manner? So my undocumented mom, whose husband died from COVID and has 3 children, mixed status, who's gonna help her understand finances, grief, mental health, right? This whole system. And we need to stop keeping people on the survival mode. We'll give you 1 month's rent assistance. Why not 3 or 6 months, along with food, and someone to support them, social workers that really can help them with that grief. We keep saying our communities of color are resilient, but we're not learning those lessons to apply them within the institutions. All those folks that went out into the community, so let's implement them, let's resource them, because that's going to make our whole community stronger. I think it's so key to continue exercising that trust muscle and supporting it. And those fundings for language access, if you give us one more mandate with no resources behind it, no se va a hacer nada. So.
And I think investing in our students, I know I probably sound like a broken record. I'm a former high school teacher, and getting to watch like our students, you know, I know, right, the other folks in this space who represent community college or CU know this, but we, the federal funding that came in that allowed us to bring students back who maybe didn't have the income to return after a family member lost their job, after they lost their job. We know that the only way we're going to get better at all of these systems actually addressing the needs of communities of color, of marginalized groups, is if we have more people in different positions of power within government, in these spaces, who look and talk like the people we're trying to serve. And we have to be willing to invest in our students who are that pathway. Because if we don't, then we're losing out on really incredible talent. I'm sitting here and I know 4 people around this table who played an incredible role in mentoring me to be here. And I want to make sure that next time, right, that you get to sit down with a group of folks, you get to meet the really amazing younger leaders. We have a lot of non-traditional students too who may not be younger, right, who are working parents. They all deserve the opportunity to enter this space and help us understand how we can serve them better. And that's, I think, how we start to close out those gaps. And that is a longer term investment, but I think one that we really can't overlook.
I think to echo what Marisa was saying, you know, as we're investing in our students and we're thinking about the conversation around health equity and the disparities that we have, and investing in our students not only to do the research, but to attract them to careers in healthcare where we can expand, you know, the network of people who are trusted people in their communities who can provide these services in the future. I think we have a huge opportunity to invest in those pathways for our students to enter those fields and see them being in those spaces so we can grow more leaders in communities.
I think there's also a moment for us to really think about how to be more nimble. Because I know we're talking about a lot of the things we did around Denver, but like, my family lives in San Luis, and they primarily, that town, speak Spanish. So yes, that messaging does matter, but even once I, who am their trusted advisor, convinced them that they should get a vaccine, the next vaccine clinic is 3 weeks away. Or it is the 45-minute drive to either Taos or Alamosa. And it's like, well, then I gotta be holding their hand for the next 3 weeks to make sure that that little bit of convincing I did to convince them and their neighbors doesn't suddenly disappear. And on that component of like, on campuses we have this thing called single stop, and it helps us get registered in any of the resources that are possible. And it's like, if we mix that with the nimbleness, and then when we are doing the vaccine clinics, also have these systems set up where communities can use single stop or something similar, then we can make sure they're getting vaccinated, we can make sure that they're getting any resources that they are leaving on the table. And then that matters, since these places only get touched every 3 to 4 weeks.
I would like to, building on what Joe said at the very beginning, that COVID didn't create the disparities we saw, it just made them impossible to afford. And so I hope after the medical part of the pandemic has passed, we don't lose sight and let go of that, because those are chronic already. And, you know, for some people that it wasn't enlightening, for those communities it was just Tuesday. And I hope that I reject everybody's notion of trying to get back to normal, because for those communities, normal wasn't so good to start with. So I would like to make sure we focus on trying to help our disenfranchised communities, our communities of color, have a normal that's worth looking forward to getting back to.
I think that really emphasizes again the importance of continuing the collaborative practices that we developed over the last couple of years. We didn't always do that well, but as the governor noted, if you didn't trust the state government, they'd get money to institutions and individuals who you did trust. You saw a lot more coordination between healthcare and education, both higher ed and secondary and elementary. There was a lot more emphasis on coordinating with churches and local agencies. So I think that kind of, let's break down those silos and let's continue to operate in that way where we are able to serve people with more of a case management approach, not we'll give you this. Well, we'll give you this, but we also recognize you need these other services as well. We've got those other agencies here working with us. We'll get you what you need. So building on that collaborative spirit that blossomed over the last couple of years, we need to make sure that we continue to water that, fertilize it, grow it, and make sure we go.
Secretary and Governor, would you like to have the opportunity to have the last word as we wrap up our conversation?
Everyone go first.
Well, I just want to thank the Secretary for hearing this and really, you know, looking at least all on the HHS side, how we can really do a better job addressing some of these disparities on non-COVID related issues. And of course, because COVID's not gone, how we can continue to double down on COVID, especially in an era where people might feel less urgency on COVID. So how do we make sure it doesn't, because of that lack of urgency, get another foothold back? Let's say, for instance, if in the future the science indicates a fourth vaccine is needed or another shot next year, or there's a different shot that is needed in the future. These are all things that we don't know yet, and we hope that that's not the case, but those are all things that are possible. And so we can't just, you know, put this on a bookshelf as our experience. We need to be ready to dust it off again and get to work in a rapid way that learns from the experience of the last 2 years.
So first I want to thank you for putting the exclamation point behind some of the things that I've heard. Nothing that I think you've said I haven't heard, because we are trying to go to a lot of communities that have been left behind in the past. But I love the way you put the exclamation point behind it. And I think, Karen, you said it very well. This is not new. It's just that the rest of the world is discovering that our public health system has gaps. We have these deep black holes where people fall in them, and we never find them. But COVID made it impossible to not see them because the numbers were just so great. So thank you for putting the exclamation point. It's been, the way I've heard it is building muscle. You all said that. I've heard it, you know, teaching people to fish instead of just giving them fish for one day. What it really means is letting people do what they know they can do if they just had a little bit of help and a little bit of direction, because most people know what they need to do. And they're the ones that the rest of the community trusts. So I would love to help you build more muscle, because you're going to need it. Whether it's the behavioral health issues that are coming down the pipe, and they're big, all the numbers are showing it. The fact that last year's numbers show 100,000 people died of overdose. We know that most parents today, almost half of parents, are worried about their kids' mental health. It's coming, and so we have to be ready. At the same time, a whole lot of folks in Colorado, as in the rest of the country, got access to healthcare through Medicaid. Once we wind down this public health emergency, a lot of those folks who got on through that additional extra effort that we were allowed to extend to states to keep people on Medicaid, that goes away. As soon as that goes away, there's some estimates are between 12 and 14 million Americans who are going to lose their health coverage because they're going to lose access to Medicaid. some of those folks will still qualify for health care. Maybe not Medicaid, maybe through the Affordable Care Act. But unless we catch them or teach them to fish, they're going to go right back into that black hole. So we need you to build that muscle. I would love to help you build that muscle. And there, I think what we want to do is we can't fund everything. We can't be there to make sure every family has that extra month of meals. But what we can do is take the projects, the people who have succeeded in those communities, the smaller ones, not the mega vaccination sites, but the little ones, at the school or maybe at the barber shop, wherever it is. If you can show us that you're succeeding, you're getting that 4 generations of women to get vaccinated, we want to be there. Because that won't cost us that much. Then I could go back to the governor and my former colleagues in Congress and say, this works. We just need some more money to go beyond just here in Colorado. So we would love to be able to do that with you. And the final thing I want to mention is, as much as we've been able to help, whether it was the American Rescue Plan, whether it was the CARES Act, there have been about 6 different funding bills that have passed through Congress since COVID hit 2 years ago that have provided almost $5 trillion to the American people. We're about to run out of money at HHS to do all those things you all talked about that we do. We need your help to convince the members of Congress in the House and Senate they still got to do some more. Because we, for example, are already shutting down applications from the providers, whether it's the hospitals, the health clinics, the doctors who are seeking reimbursement for having done vaccinations, for having done the testing. We are no longer accepting applications for reimbursement for testing and treating on COVID. We did that so we could have a little longer to go with vaccination, but chances are we're going to close vaccination applications by April the 5th, and it actually looks like it's going to be sooner because a week ago when we announced we were going to have to start to shut down that provider relief fund process, we got 17 million applications for reimbursement. To give you a sense, that's a lot. We've gotten 170 million, but that's over 2 years. In 1 week, we got what we got over 1/10 of what we got over 2 years.
Well, let me say, everything you guys are talking about with the equity clinics and everybody we brought on board, like all of that, not everybody knows this, that was all federal money. The state didn't, you all know how our state functions with Tabor. We don't have that. Everything we were able to do was because of federal funding. So some people don't know that. They think it was, it was state money. All of that response was federal. I mean, very literally close to 100% of it. I mean, maybe 99, but I mean, it was. This is really important. You're saying.
Yeah, we could do it, and it's work, and we know we still have to go into places where we work just as well. But we're seeing those resources depleted. We're no longer making certain purchases of some of these therapeutic medicines that if you're COVID infected, rather than even if the vaccine didn't work, we're now having to ramp down on some of those purchases of some of those antiviral medicines, the monoclonal antibody therapies, because we have to start, we can't spend what we don't have. And so please communicate to, and actually you've got a pretty good delegation that's been very helpful. A number of the members have been very helpful, your senators as well. But we're not going to be able to do that partnering that's so essential. We want to, because we know we hear you, and so we're going to try. But one way or the other, with what resources we have, we're going to be out there. And if you've got a good idea, let us know, because we would like to plant a seed in that idea and see it grow. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody in the room. Just terrific. Yes.